I never expected that my innocent hobby of stargazing would lead to a full-blown confrontation with Karen, our entitled neighbor. Little did I know that she would mistake my telescope for a sniper gun, triggering a chain of events that would put me at odds with the entire neighborhood. Here's how it all went down. I had always found solace in the vast expanse of the night sky, with its twinkling stars and mysterious celestial bodies. My love for astronomy had led me to become an avid telescope enthusiast, constantly seeking opportunities to observe and marvel at the wonders of the universe. I had books stacked in shelves, all echoing the beauty and mysteries that lay in the cosmic expanse above us, feeding my ever-growing passion for the stars. On that fateful evening, I found myself in the tranquility of my own suburban neighborhood, a place where kids rode their bicycles and families held weekend barbecues. The sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, while the air embraced a cool and crisp demeanor, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves of the trees lining the streets. The first stars began to show themselves, a herald of the spectacular display that was yet to come. Determined to make the most of this perfect night, I carefully set up my telescope in the front yard, amidst my tiny garden, surrounded by the fragrant smell of blooming jasmine flowers. My hands worked diligently, adjusting its position and aligning it with the brightest points in the sky. Every little detail mattered: the angle, the focus, and the position. With eager anticipation I peered through the eyepiece, my eyes widening in awe as I caught a glimpse of the moon's craters, the rings of Saturn, and the distant glow of galaxies that were light years away. I felt like a sailor navigating through a sea of stars, each glimpse offering a deeper understanding of the cosmic ocean that stretched infinitely in all directions. But my exploration was cut short. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed Karen, our entitled neighbor, storming out of her house, her face a canvas of anger and suspicion. She had a knack for being overly concerned about everyone else's business, a trait that was well known in the neighborhood. "What is that thing you're holding?" she barked, interrupting my peaceful stargazing session. Her eyes were wide, darting from me to the telescope. "It's a telescope, Karen. I'm just stargazing. You know, observing the stars," I replied, trying to keep the irritation out of my voice. She folded her arms, her eyes narrowing dangerously. "Don't lie to me! That's a sniper gun, isn't it? You're planning something dangerous," she accused, her voice escalating with each word, her imagination apparently running wild. A deep breath was needed to keep my patience. "Karen, this is just a telescope, a tool for astronomy enthusiasts like me. It's not a gun," I assured her, holding the telescope out for her to see, trying to keep the situation under control. But it seemed Karen had already built a dramatic scenario in her head. "I don't believe you! I am calling the SWAT! This is a serious threat to our community!" she shrieked, her face turning a deep shade of red. I felt a knot form in my stomach, a whirlpool of anxiety and fear spinning relentlessly as I realized the gravity of the accusation. I imagined the SWAT team descending on our peaceful neighborhood, armed and ready for a confrontation, all because of a simple misunderstanding. My heartbeat echoed in my ears as I waited, the moments feeling like hours. Soon enough, the quiet street was flooded with the blaring sirens of SWAT vehicles, breaking the calm with a loud and urgent declaration of their presence. The sight of armed officers pouring out of the vehicles was surreal. It felt like a scene from a movie, but this was real, and I was the unintentional star of this dramatic event. The neighbors gathered, some with phones out capturing every moment, while others whispered and speculated, their faces a mixture of worry and intrigue. Karen was frantically narrating her version of events, her hands wildly gesticulating towards me and the innocuous telescope lying on the ground. I felt my heartbeat in my throat, the serious faces of the SWAT team terrifyingly real as they approached me with caution, guided by a frantic Karen pointing viciously at me and the telescope, crying out, There is the sniper! He has a gun!" With a forced calm that I was far from feeling, I started explaining. "Officers, this is a misunderstanding. This here is a telescope, not a sniper gun. I am an astronomy enthusiast, and I was just stargazing." Gradually, with careful demonstrations and a chance for the officers to peer through the telescope themselves, the tense atmosphere began to diffuse. They marveled at the celestial wonders above, their stern faces breaking into smiles of awe and wonder as they realized the truth behind my intentions. I could see Karen at a distance, her stern demeanor slowly crumbling, a realization dawning upon her as she witnessed the shared amazement and wonder of the officers and I united under the mesmerizing celestial display. Finally, one officer broke the silence, his voice firm yet kind. "Ma'am, it seems like a misunderstanding. This device is a telescope meant for stargazing. It's quite a spectacular hobby, actually." The street was silent, the crowd waiting in anticipation for Karen's response. She seemed lost for words, her stern facade replaced by a mask of embarrassment and regret. Finally, with a voice barely above a whisper, she muttered a shaky, I am so sorry." I didn't know. In the aftermath, as the SWAT team retreated with lighthearted jokes and newfound curiosity about astronomy, the neighbors dispersed, albeit with a buzz of hushed conversations and lingering glances. Karen walked over, her walk of shame evident with every hesitant step. There was an awkward pause, the night sky witnessing our silent confrontation before I finally broke the silence, the hurt evident in my voice. Karen, this could have ended very badly for me. I hope in the future you'd take time to understand a situation better before making such extreme assumptions. She nodded, her eyes welling up with tears of regret. I am really sorry. I guess I let fear get the best of me. As she walked away, I couldn't help but feel a mix of sympathy and frustration. The night sky beckoned to me once again, its vastness a silent witness to the ordeal that had unfolded beneath it. I knew that the neighborhood dynamics had shifted tonight, but as I turned my gaze upwards, I couldn't shake off the feeling that the stars were still there, twinkling with a gentle reassurance, a silent promise that despite the chaos, beauty and wonder still existed, just a telescope away. Wow, what a crazy story. Can't believe someone mistook a telescope for a sniper gun. People really need to gather all the facts before jumping to conclusions. I never expected that the traffic blocker who caused me to miss the most important meeting of my career would turn out to be my own neighbor. Filled with anger and seeking revenge, I rallied the neighborhood against him, devising a plan that would teach him a lesson he wouldn't soon forget. Little did I know, this act of retaliation would escalate into a battle of wits and unexpected consequences. Here's how it all went down. So there I was, running my own cozy little enterprise with a handful of folks drawing a salary from it. Life was bustling, and business was on the rise. The pivotal moment was just around the corner. An all-important meeting had been inked in my calendar, a kind of meet and greet where my company and a few others were in the running to bag this golden contract. The day was supposed to be a game changer, the kind of opportunity that had once in a lifetime scribbled all over it. But as fate would have it, I ended up getting snagged in this monstrous traffic jam, all thanks to a bunch of climate protesters taking over the streets. Missed the meeting, missed the chance, and missed out on a contract that had more zeros in it than I cared to count. To say I was fuming would be a mild way to put it. Sure, the company wasn't doing all that bad, but with the recession nipping at our heels, landing that contract could have been a game saver, you know? Now, not one to take things lying down, I thought I'd get the authorities on it. There must be something they can do, I thought. But nah, it was a dead end, not even a whisper of sympathy from their end. Evening rolled in, and there I was, planted in front of the TV, downing a few more beers than usual, trying to get a load of who these damn eco-terrorists were. And that's when it hit me like a bolt from the blue. One of the faces blocking the road in the news clip was way too familiar. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was that guy, you know, from a couple of streets down. Yeah, that one. My first instinct? To go straight to his place and give him a piece of my mind, lay it all out man to man. But my better half wasn't having any of it, convinced me to cool my jets. Yet, the fire was far from doused. It was smoldering, planning, and plotting. By the break of dawn, I had a mission, to make the neighborhood see this guy for what he really was. Armed with a photo proof, I knocked on a few doors, gathering a little community intel on the guy. Word on the street confirmed it. It was indeed him. Everyone seemed to know him for his insufferable self-righteousness, practically declaring the public parking space as his personal property. Oh yeah, the neighborhood was buzzing with stories of his antics, his my way or the highway approach to everything. We unanimously agreed that the act of blocking traffic was exceedingly entitled, and we were determined to impart a memorable lesson to him. It was then that my next-door neighbor, who was also part of our group, had a sudden inspiration. What if we turned the tables and blocked him in instead? Another neighbor swiftly came up with a brilliant plan, and we decided to proceed with it. However, we acknowledged that there would be associated costs, and it would also inconvenience the next-door neighbor. Despite this, he graciously accepted the inconvenience, and thus, the plan was set into motion. I immediately got in touch with my neighbor, who happened to have a cousin working for a big construction company. I explained the situation to him, and we decided to take action. After hearing the whole story, he spoke to his boss, and guess what? The company had also been affected by the protests and was eager to assist us. He said, "We wouldn't be excessively charged, only the involved costs minus a very small fee due to tax reasons, and free priority delivery that very same afternoon." I was relieved to hear that they were willing to help us at a reasonable cost. Excited about our plan, I gathered the group of neighbors and shared the good news. We all pitched in money and eagerly awaited the arrival of the dumpster. It was a great feeling to see everyone coming together to teach Mr. Entitled a lesson he wouldn't forget. A large deep loader arrived in the street, and with the cooperation of the neighbors, the cars were moved to make way for the dumpster. It was strategically positioned right in front of the neighbor's house, blocking the front door that opened inward. There was only a meter or so of space left. The placement was precise and intentional, causing maximum inconvenience to the neighbor. In other words, it was sorta possible to enter and leave the house on your own if you squeezed through a bit, but that was also basically it. The sidewalk was pretty much completely blocked off. This also blocked the front view of the next-door neighbor, but he obviously couldn't care less, though his wife did protest a bit. And then the group went across the street. They grabbed several folding chairs, a table was set down, and plenty of beer and sodas were brought. We had ourselves a small party in anticipation of what would come next. As expected, later that afternoon, the neighbor arrived home wearing a large backpack, and he was not happy to see the container in front of his house. He was angry. As he spotted us chuckling, he stormed over, his face redder with each step. One of us quickly said, "Oh, don't worry too much. The company sent over the wrong size by a tiny mistake. But look on the bright side, you can still somewhat get into your house." He threw his hands in the air, starting a protest, but we were prepared. I stepped forward, holding out pictures of him causing a traffic blockade. His face faltered for a moment, before he defiantly said, "That's different." Rolling my eyes, I replied, "Of course it is." Without another word, he whipped out his phone and called the police, pacing back and forth as he talked animatedly with the dispatcher. We exchanged knowing glances amongst ourselves, aware of his history of petty complaints to the police. It was no surprise that no officers came that day, despite his incessant calls. He ended the call, his whole body vibrating with fury. He made an attempt to enter his house, but his bulky backpack got wedged between the wall and the container, pulling him back as he struggled to move forward. The sight was too comical, and we couldn't help but burst into laughter, some even clapping and cheering at the spectacle. Finally, after a fierce battle with his backpack, he managed to free himself, throwing a venomous glare at us before slamming the door shut, leaving us outside, our laughter still ringing in the air. The next day, as I was at home, 2 police officers came by. They were asking questions about the container, wanting to know how it ended up blocking Mr. Entitled's front door. Keeping a straight face, I recounted the made-up story we'd prepared, telling them about the mistake the company had made in sending the wrong size of the container. I reassured them it would be sorted out soon. Casually, I mentioned that the whole arrangement had been handled by the neighbor living across the street. I could see the officers exchanging a glance before one of them accompanied me over to the neighbor who had actually orchestrated the whole thing with his construction company contact. As we reached the neighbor's house, he welcomed us in, playing his part perfectly. He showed the officers all the necessary paperwork for the rental, keeping it atop a photo of Mr. Entitled taken during one of his traffic blocking stunts. The officer's eyes widened as he recognized the man in the picture. His gaze moved from the picture to me, a slow understanding dawning on his face as he connected the dots. "Wait a second, isn't that your neighbor?" the officer asked, to which they nodded. "So you guys blocked a traffic blocker?" the officer asked, momentarily bursting into laughter but quickly correcting himself. "Just so we're clear, can you guys guarantee that this thing will be gone tomorrow?" he asked sternly, to which they both confirmed. "Okay, that will do for now, but don't make us come back," the officer said before returning to his colleague. "Mr. Entitled, we have all the information we need. We're going back to the station to file a report about this. We will also contact the company to have this container removed as soon as possible," the officer informed the entitled neighbor. "I'm sure we'll have this all cleared up by tomorrow." And with that, they left. Mr. Entitled did call the police a few more times that day, but apparently was always told that his complaint was being processed. Mr. Entitled also didn't get any mail nor packages that day because the moment the mailman walked up to his house, he did look at the door, but soon decided to walk past. The following day, the construction company sent the deep loader to retrieve the dumpster, effectively concluding the incident. However, the pickup encountered a minor hiccup when one neighbor hesitated to move their car for approximately 10-15 minutes. He expressed concerns about potential confrontation from Mr. Entitled upon parking his car again. This situation infuriated Mr. Entitled, but he found himself unable to take any significant action. Finally, the container was successfully removed. Later that day, the 2 officers returned to inspect the situation and issued an official warning to both neighbors, advising them not to engage in similar actions in the future. With that, the incident came to a close. The entitled individual, formerly known as Mr. Entitled, earned himself a new moniker in the neighborhood, Mr. Hypocrite. As a result of his actions, people openly mocked and ridiculed him. Eventually, several months later, he decided to move away due to the negative perception and dislike he had garnered from the community. While protesting can definitely bring attention to important causes, it's also crucial to think about the impact it has on others. Finding constructive ways to make a difference, like cleaning up the environment or actively working towards solutions, can often be more effective and help garner support from a wider audience. It's all about striking the right balance between raising awareness and respecting others' daily lives. I never imagined that opening my home to my pregnant sister-in-law would unravel the very foundation of my marriage. As tensions escalated and boundaries were crossed, a single event at the baby shower shattered the fragile peace we had left. Betrayal, rage, and a fateful ultimatum tore through the air, forever altering the course of our lives. Here's how it all went down. So, I, a 29-year-old female, have been married to my husband for 8 years. About 2 months ago, I had my third miscarriage at 31 weeks. I won't be talking about it because it makes me feel so depressed, but you'll need to remember this. About 4 months ago, my sister-in-law, who is 20 years old, came crying at our doorstep telling us she's pregnant, and her boyfriend didn't want anything to do with the pregnancy and had nowhere to go. My husband and I generously welcomed her into our home, providing emotional support during the challenging initial weeks. We spent quality time together, comforting her through tears, enjoying our favorite TV shows, and indulging in plenty of ice cream. I valued maintaining a clean and organized home, which is important to me. I could feel the frustration simmering in me, day by day, as I navigated through the scattered clothes and dirty dishes that seemed to spring up like weeds wherever my sister-in-law went. It wasn't just the mess, it was the blatant disrespect for our home, the one that I took so much pride in keeping clean and welcoming. One day, reaching my limit as I discovered her adult toys nonchalantly left on our living room table, I knew it was time to have a talk before bringing this issue up with my husband. Taking a deep breath to steady myself, I approached her, trying to choose my words carefully. "Hey, I need to talk to you about something that's been bothering me," I began, my voice carrying a touch of hesitancy. She looked up, her expression unreadable. "It's just, I've noticed that there's often a lot of mess left around. Clothes, dishes, and, well," I trailed off, gesturing vaguely towards the living room table, feeling my cheeks heat up. She followed my gaze, and her face crumpled as she realized what I was referring to. Tears filled her eyes almost instantly, and she started crying, nodding her head. I know I should try to be cleaner," she stammered through her tears, the words tumbling out of her in a rush. I felt a mix of relief and sadness seeing her like this. I hurried to reassure her, my voice softer now. "It's okay, it's really okay. I just wanted to express how important it is for me to maintain a certain level of cleanliness in the house," I told her, trying to offer a comforting hand on her shoulder. She sniffled, wiping her tears, and nodded vigorously, promising with a sincere look in her eyes that it wouldn't happen again. But as days went by, my heart sank as the situation far from improved. It actually worsened. She seemed to have taken our conversation as a green light to further neglect her responsibilities. Clothes piled higher, dishes seemed to multiply, and her room became a tornado of disorder. To my dismay, she began to expect me to shoulder her chores, asserting that her pregnancy excused her from all household duties. The demands came daily, each one more astonishing than the last. I found myself standing at the crossroads of sympathy for her condition and resentment for the growing expectations she piled on me. I felt overwhelmed by the responsibilities of maintaining a clean home while also coping with the emotional burden of recently experiencing a miscarriage. It's worth mentioning that I am the sole owner of the house as I made the investment. When I expressed my concerns to my husband, his response caught me off guard. His voice tinged with a plea for understanding. "Honey, she's going through a lot right now. We really should be helping her out. Plus, it might make you feel better to take care of someone who's pregnant," he suggested, a hopeful note in his voice. I felt a storm brewing inside me, a whirlpool of emotions that threatened to spill over. The words, "make you feel better," echoed in my head, clanging like an alarm bell that roused my frustration and disbelief. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Was this some kind of consolation? A way to divert my legitimate concerns into a therapy session through house chores? I fought hard to keep my voice steady as I replied, a taut line of irritation threading through my words. "Make me feel better? Seriously?" The question hung heavily in the air, charged with the weight of my dismay and the deep-seated resentment that had been festering inside me. I paused, taking a deep breath to collect my thoughts before I continued, the hurt evident in my voice. "She is indeed going through a lot, I understand that, but letting her stay with us, that was already us helping her out, wasn't it?" I couldn't mask the hurt in my eyes as I met his, the plea in my gaze seeking understanding, seeking solidarity. I swallowed hard, trying to find the right words to express the turmoil inside me. "I don't want to invalidate her pain, but we have our own challenges, our own problems that we're navigating through," I added, my voice breaking slightly as I tried to convey the gravity of our situation, the strain it was putting on both of us. Anyways, we moved on, and I did my best to maintain work and the household chores. My husband works from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., so he isn't around to help much. I work full-time from home, so it's been super stressful. When I even try to ask for help from my sister-in-law, she always makes an excuse, even if she's just watching TV. In the midst of the daily mess and the continuous cycle of disagreements, there came a moment that pushed my frustration over the edge. It was a small thing really, but sometimes it's the little things that tip the scale, right? After the miscarriage, there was this one food that kind of became my comfort. So I went out, bought it, and scribbled my name on the package before putting it in the fridge. I even mentioned to my sister-in-law, kind of half joking but also serious, "Hey, this is mine, okay? Hands off." Well, fast forward to the next day, I came home dreaming of indulging in my little treat. But lo and behold, I opened the fridge, and it was gone. Yep, she had eaten it. I couldn't help but feel this bubble of frustration burst inside me. I mean, it was just food, but it was my food, you know? Especially considering that I was the one buying the groceries most of the time. I felt this sort of burning annoyance at the fact that the one thing I asked to be mine was taken. So I told my husband about it, half expecting him to share in my annoyance. But instead, he kind of brushed it off. "She's pregnant. You know how it is. You need to be less selfish. Life is about sacrifices," he said. I just stood there, kind of stunned. Here I was, upset over something so simple, yet something that meant a lot to me. And I was being called selfish? It felt like a small injustice in the grand scheme of things, but at that moment, it felt big. It felt significant, because it was just one more thing in a series of disregarded boundaries. It was just frustrating to say the least. Then out of nowhere, my sister-in-law announced she was hosting her baby shower at our house. Honestly, I was stunned. She didn't ask or even hint at wanting to hold it here. She just assumed it would be fine. I was torn between being there for her and feeling totally invaded, knowing a bunch of strangers would be milling around our place. The lack of consideration hurt, especially with everything else that was going on. I remember feeling a curious mix of reluctance and resolve as I headed towards the party, my husband practically urging me on every step of the way. I had aired my reservations to him, emphatically declaring this could permanently change the dynamics between her and me. Yet, here I was, trying to keep a tenuous grip on my nerves. Around the midway point of the party, amidst the chatter and smiles, my husband and sister-in-law decided it was time to reveal something special. I heard them say they wanted to showcase the nursery to everyone. I remember thinking, nursery? What on earth is going on? I felt my heart beginning to race as we all started moving upstairs. Confusion reigned in my mind, trying to work out the logistics in my head. Was she planning to stay that long? Which room had been converted? And then, as if struck by lightning, realization dawned upon me. They were leading everyone to the nursery I had lovingly prepared for my baby. The baby I had recently lost. I could feel a torrent of emotions welling up inside as I stood at the doorway, witnessing people showering praises on her, commending the effort put into setting the nursery up. I could feel my breath hitching, tears welling up uncontrollably as I absorbed the horrific reality of the situation. This was my nursery, every detail screaming out to me, reminding me of the dreams and hopes that were associated with it. I couldn't hold back anymore. Tears streamed down my face as I broke into uncontrollable sobs, the deep-seated sorrow rapidly transforming into an all-consuming rage. I could feel everyone's eyes on me as I turned towards my sister-in-law, my voice breaking as I yelled, "You are the foulest human being for doing this to me." The room became eerily silent, everyone frozen as I unleashed months of pent-up frustration, hurt, and anger. I could see my husband standing there, his face pale, jaw practically hitting the floor as he witnessed the spectacle unraveling before him. With tear-filled eyes, I turned to face him, my voice shaky but loud, filled with anguish. And as I spun back towards my sister-in-law, an uncontrollable torrent of words poured out, my voice echoing with despair and accusation. "How dare you use my nursery for my baby? How dare you presume you have the right to do this?" The room felt like a pressure cooker, the air thick with tension, as everyone remained silent, their faces a canvas of shock and dismay. I stood there, chest heaving, tears streaming down, feeling broken and enraged. The nursery, a place of joy and anticipation, having turned into a room of betrayal and heartache. What she told me made me fall to my knees, sobbing. "It's not my fault you couldn't produce a child. Why let this go to waste? You're so selfish." My husband tried to pick me up off the floor, but I yelled again, standing on my knees which were now shaking. I told him, "Pick!" A dumbfounded look on his face. I yelled again, "Pick me or her." He couldn't even muster up anything to say. I just looked at him, pure betrayal. I pushed past the crowd of family and ran straight up here to type this out. Even if no one sees this, at least it's helped me let these emotions out. Now's the point where I ask, am I the asshole? After all the dirty looks and shaming, it was just my husband, sister-in-law, and myself. They sat themselves on the couch, not saying anything. I sat with them. The silence felt like forever. None of us had anything to say, and I knew I'd have to start the conversation. I looked at my husband and said, "Did you decide?" He looked at me, just staring. I asked again, this time in a firm tone. He ended up mumbling some sort of insult, and I couldn't really make out what he said, something derogatory. I stood up and told them both to leave, and then they wanted to talk, telling me this is all a misunderstanding, that they're sorry, blah blah blah. I grabbed a backpack from my shoe closet and told them to pack their things. My sister-in-law told me I couldn't just make her leave, and that I was a horrible person. I laughed in her face and told her this is my house and I can do whatever I want. My husband stood next to me and told her it was only for a little while. I turned to him and said, "Oh, you too, get out." He got all mad and told me we were a married couple and that this isn't how marriage works. I told him, no, it is not. Marriage is where two people support each other and not treat their spouse poorly. They both ended up leaving after many insults towards me. Oh, but wait, it's not over. This morning, as I was getting ready for a Zoom meeting with a few other coworkers, my husband showed up. I let him in, telling him to get whatever he needed and to go because I had to work. He started apologizing and telling me he wants to make it right. I told him I just need time away from him. Then he threw in my face, "Well, it's not my fault you lost our children. Maybe this would have never happened. My sister was right, you are selfish." I have never made my husband feel like he cannot grieve with me over this, never made him feel less than because of his pain. I turned around and slapped him in the face. I never condone violence, and I'm very upset I would ever do that to another human, but I just couldn't deal with this. He took a step back and then threw all of my makeup on the floor, which I understand, but then he started breaking all the decorations in my bathroom. I yelled at him to stop and that I was sorry, but he just kept going, even going as far as punching a hole in my bathroom wall. It was like I was seeing all of his bottled-up emotions from our children's death come out, but he went too far when he tried to grab me, yelling in my face. I kicked him off and told him to get the F word out. He walked out of the bathroom, and I watched him break a few more items as he left. The second he left, I had a panic attack, looking at the mess he made, and even just seeing how much he hid his pain. I called my mother and told her everything that has been happening. I don't talk to my family much due to some past trauma with them. She told me she was on her way. The second she got here, I just broke down, and she held me. Then she stood up and started taking pictures of everything he broke. I asked her what she was doing, and she turned to me and said, "We're suing this jerk." I honestly didn't even argue. I was so hurt by everything my husband did to me. My mom packed up my computer, and I grabbed a few outfits. My mom and I drove to a hotel, and she insisted on staying with me while I finished up work. My mom called a locksmith and my attorney. I will be divorcing him as well. I feel guilty for just giving up on my husband and 8 years of our marriage, but it's time for a divorce. I can't live like this, and neither can my husband. I wish I could say we moved on, forgave each other, and I got to see my sister-in-law have her baby, but that's not reality. The decision to move a pregnant woman into the same house as a couple still grieving the loss of a child can create an incredibly challenging and emotionally charged environment. It's understandable that they may not have had many other options, but it's important to prioritize the emotional well-being of all parties involved. This situation was a recipe for conflict and instability, as no one was in a stable emotional state. It's crucial to consider the impact of such arrangements on everyone's mental health and make decisions that prioritize healing and support. If you enjoyed today's stories, check out the other videos on your screen now. Submit your own stories at you'rethejerk.com. Subscribe now, or you're definitely the jerk.